Voice of Peace Radio. Anissa Radio. Don Bosco. Bakhita Radio. Good News Radio. Easter.
Catholic Radio Network. At the service of life. Bakhita Radio News.
Bakhita Radio Evening News Service. The headlines for Saturday, April 8, 2017. St. Walter. Father Joseph Yomoi late to final rest at Rajaf Cemetery. President Kiir and other government officials contributes over £6 million during Great South Sudan Run. And University of Bahr al-Ghazali staff calls for removal of Vice Chancellor. Hello, good evening. I'm Damian Ogale Henry Lordo with the news in details. The faithful of the Catholic Archdiocese of Juba on Saturday witnessed the burial of Father Joseph Yomoi Solomon at Rajaf Cemetery. Auxiliary Bishop of Catholic Archdiocese of Juba, Santo Lokupio, consoles priests, relatives and friends of the late pastoral leader during the Requiem Mass at St. Teresa's Cathedral. He expresses heartfelt condolences of the Archbishop Paulino Lucudoloro to the congregation. Late Father Yomoi died on April 5th at St. Kizito's Health Center. The late Father Yomoi died as a second assistant parish priest of Sacred Heart College Glory, the Secretary General noted. President Salva Kiir and the other top government officials on Saturday contributes over £6 million South Sudan pounds during the Great South Sudan Run that seeks for fundraise to fight famine and poverty in the country. President Salva Kiir contribute 2 million South Sudan pounds. Defense Minister Kwal Manyanjuk also pledges 3 million SSP. Meanwhile, First Vice President Taban Dengai contribute 1 million South Sudan pounds. Speaker of Transitional National Parliament Anthony Lino Makana contribute 500,000 South Sudan pounds. Organizers said the total amount fundraised will be announced in few days. Speaking during the opening ceremony, President Kiir calls for increased efforts to fight hunger in the country.
Fighting poverty, it is a process. It is not something that can be done one day. But fighting famine is immediate, because nobody can go for 2-5 days without food and then he can survive. But you can live poor for years. I am grateful for those who have turned up, all the athletes from both Kenya and Ethiopia. You are all welcome. And what you have done is highly appreciated.
Meanwhile, Minister of Culture, Youth and Sports Nadia Dudi Arop calls on the people of the country to unite and work together in order to eradicate poverty.
To fight the famine and the poverty is not an easy, but it needs our commitment. It needs to thinking how we can fight the poverty in the country. It doesn't need only always to fundraising, to call some people to depend on what the people are giving us from outside, but from today to thinking for how to eradicate or to fight against poverty in the country. The issue of famine in South Sudan is not our culture.
9 athletes from Ethiopia and Kenya have teamed up to launch the Great Run South Sudan Marathon in a bid to raise funds to fight famine and poverty in the war-torn East African country where 100,000 people are facing starvation. The event, led by retired Ethiopian long-distance and road running athlete Haile Gebrselassie, took place in Juba on Saturday. Organizers said the 10-kilometer race attracted over 2,000 local and international athletes. University of Bahr al-Ghazali staff have called for the removal of Vice Chancellor and his 2 deputies because they cannot resolve the problems of the workforce. According to Radio Voice of Hope, Chairman of Workers' Trade Union Daniel Malok Achot says Professor Samson Samuel Wasara was appointed as a supervisor.
The member of General Assembly are requesting from Honorable Minister to recommend to His Excellency the President of the Republic of South Sudan for 1. Removal of supervisor and his deputies of University of Bahr el Ghazal as per his statement on 15 March 2017 during the meeting with the Executive Office of Trade Union. For he is unable to solve the problem of the workers of the University of Bahr el Ghazal. He is only a supervisor, and supervisor has nothing to do. Supervisor cannot solve a problem.
Achut says the staff urges the Minister of Higher Education to forward their request to the President to appoint a new Vice Chancellor for the University of Bahr el Ghazal.
Point number 2 is actually appointment of the Of the real VC. Appointment of the real VC, who will be able to solve the problem of the Of the workers of Bahr el Ghazal University. For example, 1. Transport allowance of supporting staff has to be reinstated and payment of the arrears of January 2017. 2. Promotion of supporting staff. This promotion was implemented late in January 2017 instead of July 2016, as per other universities.
Achut also pointed out that the workers have right to claim their rights through peaceful means and call for immediate change in leadership. Last week, the staff went on 3-day sit-down strike for the first time, but the issue was not addressed properly. Radio Voice of Hope could not reach the university administration for comment. Minister of Health in Jonglei State says the state has registered nearly 200 cholera infections and 29 death cases since the outbreak in February. Angok Gordon told Bakhita Radio on Friday that most of the cases came from remote villages along the River Nile and cattle camps. He attributes the rise to lack of clean drinking water and poor sanitation in rural communities.
Up to this morning, people are affected 198. Out of this number, 113 got discharged. And the cumulative of the death cases from the start of the outbreak up to now, there are 29. This number, not all of them died in the facility, but only 6 died in the facility. Some of them died in the nearby villages. This is now a report of Ministry of Health and WHO and UNICEF. Now, the other report from the communities, they are putting the number bigger than this. They are talking of 54 cases lost. They don't give the exact number of the people who got sick.
South Sudan has declared cholera outbreak for the 3rd year in a row since 2014. World Health Organization report of March says 4,500 cholera cases, including 81 deaths, have been reported in 90 states of South Sudan since the declaration of the outbreak in July 2016. You are listening to Bakhita Radio News. Medical Director at Tonj State Civil Hospital says the facility has no medicines and it is difficult to treat patients. According to Radio Don Bosco, Matiang Agni urges communities to remain patient and that people should go for checkups. Pregnant women have to follow up regularly to avoid complications during birth.
We have run out of some medicines here, but we are concentrating for the inpatient. Hospital is give priority for inpatient. If you admit the patient, it's very important to give treatment and you don't send the patient to the market. This is the way we are concentrating. The people say if you come to the hospital, they want to collect the drugs only. They don't care about it, to know your problems. You're supposed to know your problem before you take the drugs. If you know the problem, you can solve the problems. So I want to advise my people, please you come to the hospitals. At least to know your problem. It's not because of drugs. Because people come because they need drugs and they don't care about it. So please come to the hospital.
Radio Don Bosco could not reach Health Minister for comment on the issue. Before ending with the headlines, let's listen to a special report on South Sudan women under representation in politics. Women are still underrepresented in politics and other leadership positions across the world, especially South Sudan. Our journalist of Radio Bakhita, Patrick Juma, investigated barriers South Sudanese women face in political participation in decision-making process.
Despite the fact that women in South Sudan account for about 60% of the total population, their political participation in higher decision-making process in the governance of the country does not seem equal to their numbers. According to data from the Interparliamentary Union, women comprises about 28% of South Sudan's Transitional National Legislative Assembly. My research about women's representation in President Kiir's cabinet of the Transitional Government of National Unity shows that only 6 women holding full national ministerial positions. This unequal representation is attributed to discriminatory cultural practices, poverty, high illiteracy rate among women, and low economic empowerment among others. Women's rights activist Grace John Kenyi of the Community Empowerment for Progress organization expresses frustration at the low level of women's participation in politics.
Women participation at the national level and the state level, it's not yet up to date. Because we have seen with the national level, for example, the parliament, yes, we have women representatives, they are there in the parliament. And when we come to the states, there are certain states that have not yet made it to that number that we want to see per our constitution, the 25% affirmative action.
Grace urges the national government to increase women's representation in the government.
So whenever we have a law that says women must be represented 25%, we have to go by that. We need to ensure that women are represented. And then if they are represented, if there are gaps, so we need to think of how to cover that gaps. In case if there is issues of performance, we need to also empower them to bring them up so that they also move together with the men. We cannot avoid them or we cannot isolate women because they are not educated.
Meanwhile, Betty Sunday, the coordinator for Women Monthly Forum, a local civil society group advocating for women's empowerment, urges government to appoint women in positions that are traditionally reserved for men, like security, defense, and economy.
Women are there, but they're being given as deputies. So we want women to be like a minister of finance, a minister of defense. We have women who have been liberating all this country. We have a strong women. They are generals there, so we want them even to be in the minister of defense. Like also national security, we need a woman to be there. There are women, females who are security.
Jema Nunu Kumba is one of those women in higher places. Nunu works as the National Minister of Wildlife Conservation and Tourism. She is also the Acting Secretary General of SPLM. Nunu encourages women to work hard and compete for positions with men.
Women also, to have their fair representation, must be active in politics. Because to come to a political position, you must belong to a political party. That means women should be active in politics in order to compete with the men for the seats.
Minister Nunu claims that her party, the SPLM, has increased women's participation from 25 to 35% for effective participation in politics.
Now, within the constitution of the SPLM, we have increased it to 35. And we are going to work very hard to ensure that this also goes into constitution. Because constitution is a supreme law and it will be imposed on everybody to do it because that is the national law. So by doing that, we will be able to increase. So it's not enough. Our representation is not enough.
Anthony Lino Makana, the Speaker of the Transitional National Legislative Assembly, also echoes the importance of education as a key tool for the liberation of women. He says government, in partnership with UNICEF, have started the Girl Child Education Program to empower the next generation of women to be equal to men.
His government needs to fund education, especially girl child education. Also, boys need to work together with girls so that at the end we don't promote girls and then we leave boys behind, or don't promote boys and leave girls behind, so that they move together.
Makana says there is still need to increase women's participation in politics.
In parliament, yes, they are 30% occupied. Even at the leadership of parliament, they occupy 30% of the seats. Women are represented, they have reached the level of 30% in parliament. But a lot needs to be done so that this representation can be very effective.
Dr. James Okuk is a political analyst and a lecturer at the University of Juba. He encourages South Sudan's leaders to give women exposure in order to learn best practices from other democratic countries.
You open South Sudan
Sudan up to other countries so that our women go and see what other countries, and that will change the culture and behavior that has been locked up in the territory of South Sudan for a long time. So once you do this, then in future there is no doubt women will be very active in public affairs and their contribution will be very significant for the good of this country.
South Sudan Transitional Constitution 2011 stipulates that women shall have the right to participate equally with men in public life at all levels of government. However, there is need for political stability in order for women to realize these provisions. But till then, these provisions for women remain in black and white. For Bakhita Radio News in Juba, I am Patrick Juma.
And to end the news, we recap to the headlines once again. Father Joseph Yomoi late to final rest at Rajaf Cemetery. President Kiir and other government officials contributes over £6 million during Great South Sudan Run. And University of Bahr al-Ghazali staff calls for removal of Vice Chancellor. You can check this and other stories on our Facebook page Bakhita Radio or follow us on Twitter at Bakhita Radio. I'm Damian Ogali Henry Lordu bidding you a very good and a blessed weekend in our company. Stay tuned.
Wow.
Catholic Radio Network, at the service of life.